Yo, what's up, guys? Eating Devs Fantasy Sports. I'm Ron, and I'm back here with another mock draft. So, in this mock draft, I'm going to be picking from the 12th spot. It tends to be my favorite spot to draft from in most leagues, just because I like having a good amount of value in the first couple of rounds. Of course, double-edged sword. If you pick at the 12, you're not going to pick again for quite a while when it gets to the third and fourth round. So, let's first talk about some initial strategies, right? So when you pick from the 12, just one more thing, it's going to be half PPR, one quarterback, I think two flex, two wide receiver or something. Could be one flex, three wide receiver. Doesn't really matter too much, and I'll kind of explain why a little later. But just initial strategy when you're going into these turn picks, whether you're at the 1 or at the 12, is that reaching for a player is not necessarily a bad idea. It's actually more than likely necessary when, especially, considering who's in your league, what types of league mates you have. If you know that there are guys that tend to reach, you're gonna have to do the same. I mean, that's just how it works. Because you don't pick for quite a while, in between picks. So yeah, let's just go ahead and start it and just see how it plays out. This is just going to be sleepers auto picks, so you're going to see some pretty goofy picks. You might see some weird ones. I think in my last mock, Cooper Kupp went first off the board. So let's check it out. Let's just go ahead and start the draft and see what's up. So typical. I think I'm going to pause on my turn. I know I have a 3-minute timer, but I would like to kind of discuss who to pick at certain junctures within the draft. So let's just go ahead and pause it here. We'll bring up the player list. All right, so taking a look at the board now, we see that most of my tier 1 running backs are gone. Most of the tier 1 wide receivers are gone. So this is when you're in a pretty tough spot, especially if nobody picks a quarterback. You're in a pretty tough spot. Now, I typically like to punt quarterback and tight end unless there's a significant amount of value to be had at a particular pick. So, for example, at the 112, typically at this point in the draft, even in a one quarterback league, Josh Allen would be gone here, and potentially even Patrick Mahomes could be gone here, depending on the league, of course. But at this stage, so let's debate some of the players, right? We'll start with running back because that's typically what people tend to like to draft early on in drafts. They tend to go heavy on running backs. That's my strategy: go heavy running backs early, and then I kind of transition into wide receivers in those mid rounds where you can get some pretty good value. Like I think last season I was targeting guys like Cooper Kupp, Deontay Johnson, Deebo Samuel. I know it sounds like bullshit, but I had Deebo in most of my leagues. And I like to do something similar. Guys who you think can take that next step and come into that wide receiver 1, or that top 12 type of thing. So let's first talk about running backs. Joe Mixon is the last now he's essentially a tier 2. He's at near the top of tier 2, but I'll just quickly explain to you how I see these running backs. Now looking at Sleeper's ADP, you guys might not agree, and neither does Sleeper, but I have Alvin Kamara and Joe Mixon in the top of tier 2, kind of that transition phase from tier 1 to tier 2. Unfortunately, I also have Eckler in that range as well. So most people have Eckler as a tier 1 guy, a top 4 pick. I don't. I have him in that second tier of guys. I just, I love Eckler. He's a fantastic athlete. He is 27. He is kind of a smaller back, and he's coming off a great season, but I tend to shy away from drafting guys like Eckler, who extreme talent, but the team seems to be looking for a guy to complement him. They've been searching for the past couple of seasons, and they haven't been able to find that since the departure of Melvin Gordon. And it's just a little bit of cause for concern with Spiller coming into town, so that's why Eckler is, a little bit concerning to me. But we're kind of getting a little bit off topic, but let's go back to the running back. So to me, at this pick, with these guys left on the board, the last couple of guys who I would be comfortable taking here is Joe Mixon and Alvin Kamara. I know we can argue all day about Deandre Swift and Nick Chubb. I just see Joe Mixon and Kamara as like those last 3 down backs. And I'll explain to you why. So Deandre Swift, another 3 down back, typically you'd think, because he's a fantastic receiving running back. But here are my cause for concern, or this is my cause for concern for Deandre Swift. Number one is he's on a bad offense, or at least he has a bad quarterback. That's for sure. And the Detroit Lions, nobody knows how good or bad they're going to be this season. I tend to stick to the few constants we have in life, which is death, taxes, and the Detroit Lions are not very good. That's just been the case for me forever. Even when they had Stafford, they were never really that good. So I'm going to stick to that. I think historical significance of one of those certainties in life reigns true, and I'm going to stick to that. As talented, as great as Deandre Swift is as a dynasty prospect, as a running back, at this pick, I wouldn't feel comfortable taking him with a guy like Mixon and Kamara still on the board. Now, the Bengals' offensive line have drastically improved. They are one of the hottest young teams. Joe Mixon is a workhorse back on that team. To me, it's Mixon. And just to quickly split hairs, I mean, I'll cover Chubb real quick here as well. The issue is Kareem Hunt, and the issue is you now have Deshaun Watson coming to town, who's from the Watson that we've seen in Houston. He's always been like a pass heavy type of running back. Doesn't really check down to his running backs very much, and that's where my fear is. So let's just say he did check down. Let's say he suddenly changes and becomes a different quarterback, starts checking down to his running back. Is that going to be Chubb or is it going to be Hunt? Coming in on third downs. And Hunt even takes some like series from Chubb at times, not just third down work. And that's always been my concern for Chubb since he came into the league. Again, all of these guys are supremely talented. This isn't like a talent problem. It's really just like an opportunity. It's a matter of opportunity. You want to follow the opportunity, follow where those workhorse running backs are. To me, it's Kamara and it's Mixon. It would be Swift as well, but we did see Williams take work from him last season on third downs. And I think Williams is sticking around. They'd be foolish not to lean on him. It's just really a matter of just being on a slightly worse offense, I think. Now, you can easily say the Saints offense would be worse than the Lions. Jameis Winston with the Saints last season wasn't that great. I know he had that like 5 touchdown game to start the season, but yeah, it's just Kamara, supremely talented, has been proven. He's been a top. I mean, let's take a look, dude. He's been, since he came into the season, he's been dynamite. He's never had really a bad season. You've been happy getting him in the top in the first round every season you've had him, and I think I'll continue that. He's only 26. When they hit 27, going into 28 is kind of when I start to get a little bit worried, which is, I think, how old Eckler is, right? 27, yeah. So at this pick, I'm going to go ahead and go with Mixon. Now, you could go Mixon or Kamara. You can really choose any of these last 4 guys, and I don't think anybody will laugh at you. Let's just go ahead and resume it. And I'm going to take Mixon. I think you could be pretty happy about being able to get Mixon at the 112. So now it's our pick again at the 2-1. And this is where you can load up and get Kamara and have Mixon and Kamara as your 2 stable running backs on your team. They will carry you most of the season as long as they stay healthy. Or you can make a YOLO play and get a wide receiver like Debo here, get a wide receiver like Tyreek Hill. But I think most of the value to be had at this pick would be Josh Allen. Now, you're most likely going to get the quarterback 1 by getting Josh Allen, assuming he stays healthy, of course. So by being able to get the QB1 and in my opinion, top 4, top 5 running back, that's like the biggest significant advantage here by getting Josh Allen. I think you set yourself apart from the league the most with that pick. If this was a real draft and a lot of money was on the line, I might go with like Alvin Kamara here, because I think that would just be super spicy to have Mixon and Kamara as my 2 starting running backs. Like, typically when I play fantasy and I go up against a team who has 2 like powerful RB1 workhorses, I tend to get very worried. But when I see you got a team with a Josh Allen, hey, he can drop 30 on me the same way a fucking Kirk Cousins could drop 30 on me. So, yeah, for the sake of this mock, just to see how it plays out, because I went QB early before, I'm going to go with Kamara here. Yeah, I'm going to go with Kamara just to see what happens. And, I see no reason to go Kelsey there, in my opinion. He's getting pretty old. Let's just have a look at Kelsey's age real quick. 32, dude. I know Tyreek Hill has departed from the Chiefs, but at 32 years old, and we just don't know how good the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be next season. We'll see if they can figure out their running back room. They need to have a more balanced offense going forward, because last season was rough. All right, so my pick is back on the board. I'm going to go ahead and pause it just to do a little bit of player comparison at this pick. Now, quickly looking at the board, looking at the wide receivers, just a glance before I give you my comments. Yeah. All right, so we kind of we took a risk by not going for Josh Allen. And I think there's still, so I'll just start here. There's still two quarterbacks who I would be comfortable taking here, and it's Lamar and Kyler, with a preference to Kyler. So I think Kyler Murray is going to have a better season than Lamar Jackson this season. I think the Cardinals' offense as a whole is just more conducive to a productive quarterback, as we've seen in the past. Now, you could say, but what about Lamar Jackson's QB1 MVP season? He's 2 years removed from that now. And his rushing production has really decreased over the last couple of seasons. And let me just look at his seasonal averages. So in his QB1 MVP season, he had 1,200 yards and 7 touchdowns on 176 attempts. And his attempts have gone down every season. So 176 to 159 to 134 with only 2 touchdowns last season. I know he was injured for a good part of the season, but I had Lamar Jackson in one of my main leagues last season. I watched most of his games. He was getting kind of low quality or low value rushing attempts. When they got near the red zone, for some reason they stopped using him as a running quarterback, which was super strange because that's where he's the most deadly, in my opinion. Maybe not the most deadly. I mean, open space, midfield for sure, a lot more space to operate. But yeah, so Lamar Jackson's kind of tapered off over his past couple of seasons. You can attribute that to tons of variables. Just there's no reason to discuss a couple of mundane or abstract variables that I think are why the Ravens are doing worse or Lamar's doing worse. I just think he's a type of player who age is going to make him super relevant as soon as he starts to slow down. That's just the fact of the matter. He's not the best passer in the NFL. He is really someone who relies on their athleticism. And in most sports where you have a player who relies on their athleticism, as they get older, they are way less effective. Blake Griffin in the NBA. Blake Griffin's, just one of the guys that comes to mind. In the NFL, you can think about most running backs. The same reason they don't remain relevant till late is because athleticism is like their core selling proposition, I suppose. I just started a list and had one name. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not. All right. But anyway, Lamar Jackson, that's why I wouldn't take him. It's just I see a downward trend in production, in yards per carry, and in rushing touchdowns, rushing production. His passing efficiency seems to be stagnant. 16 touchdowns, 13 picks last season. So this is where I would go Kyler. Again, you could look at a wide receiver, but I like to wait until round 5 through 9 is where I really go for those wide receivers, especially because the guys that are currently on the board are not guys that I love compared to guys that I could get in the 5th, if that makes any sense. So, like, for example, if you were to take Deontay here, I don't think he's going to be that much better than a Pittman, than a Waddle if you were to fall. So, with that in mind, you can triple down on an RB and a QB here. I'm going to go ahead and take, so let's just start this draft again. I'm going to take Kyler here at the 312, and I'm going to then go back let's just have a quick look at tight ends. Nope. Nobody that I would take this early. Don't even have to look at the list too long. I would not take Hawkinson or Schultz here. A wide receiver could be a fine pick here. You could go for an Amari Cooper. But at that point, if your wide receiver 1 on your team is Amari Cooper, I wouldn't feel too happy about that. And if that's the case, you might as well load up on another RB. Like, you might as well load up on another legit bona fide workhorse back, because I don't know if Amari Cooper is going to move the needle, or Deontay Johnson with a rookie quarterback. And Terry McLaurin, I've never been a fan of Terry McLaurin. I'll just say it right now. I know everyone thinks he's a fantastic wide receiver, and he might be, but he's never had a quarterback. He's never finished better than 20th in PPR. Like, and he still doesn't have a quarterback. So I don't know where this huge, massive positive sentiment toward Terry McLaurin is, or where it's ever come from. You need a good quarterback if you want to produce, and that doesn't. Of course, there's outliers to that, but it's just, if you're going to pick somebody this early in a draft, it's just not worth the draft capital, in my opinion, for a guy who still doesn't have a quarterback. And yeah, DJ Moore could be a fine pick here. Also, the same issue. If you look at these next picks, it's like no quarterback for Deontay, no quarterback for Terry McLaurin, no quarterback for DK Metcalf. Oh, I mean, literally no. Like, they're going to have just an empty spot on the field for that. DJ Moore, also no quarterback. Amari Cooper's that first guy who you see, okay, Deshaun Watson could yield a wide receiver 1. He could give enough production to allow for a wide receiver 1, in my opinion. And then you have guys who could be speculative. I mean, yeah, I just don't like any of these wide receivers. Jerry Jeudy's a little too risky, because you don't know how that Denver offense is going to shape out and who, Wilson's going to prefer in the offense. So to me, at this pick, you got to go with another running back. It's unfortunate that you can't get a wide receiver yet. None of these guys. If Mike Evans fell, maybe I would have considered it. T. Higgins, I would have considered it. But here we'll go for a running back, and this is a tough one, but I think it has to be either Akers or Akers, Montgomery, Hall would be the 3 guys that I would consider. I think it's got to be Akers. I don't like Antonio Gibson. I don't like what I've been hearing out of camp so far. They've been saying that his workload is going to vary by week. Yeah, that just scares me a little bit. I don't know if he's that talented to take this early. So as we look at the board, we see a lot of guys falling who I would have liked at my next pick. DeAndre Hopkins gets taken. So now this is where you pretty much have to start looking at wide receiver. And there's, right off the bat, there's something that I quite like. And I already know what 2 picks I'm going to take here. Let me just discuss. So again, we look at the tight end tab just to give it a quick look. And there's no one I would take this early. Again, none of these guys move the needle where it'd be worth taking them above some of the wide receivers that I like. Looking at running backs again, if you want to just be that guy in the draft and just draft every running back, the last couple guys on this list who I would recommend would be Elijah Mitchell, as he's going to be the workhorse back most likely for the Niners as long as he stays healthy. And you could go for Sanders. I've never liked Sanders, but I think the Eagles' offense should be a pretty productive offense, and I think they're going to lean on him. They started to lean on Sanders a little more at the end of last season, but I think Gainwell will have his role. I think Hurts, of course, will have his role in the rushing game, which will take away some red zone production from Sanders. But, yeah, I mean, you could go Mitchell or Sanders here, but I wouldn't. Of course, you already have 3 good stud running backs. The 2 guys I would take with this pick would be Marquis Brown and Mike Williams. So I'm going to take Brown because you have Kyler Murray, so I kind of like that stack. Now, I know a lot of people might think that's super early to take Brown. A lot of people don't even like Brown. But I think he's one of those guys where, considering my team where you have really solid foundational players like Akers, Kamara, Mixon, who will always have a starting roster spot on my team, having a boomy type player like a Marquise Brown, I think is a nice contrast to the 3 stable running backs that I have. You can kind of be a little more risky with your wide receivers when you have solid running backs. And that's what I like about that. So this is kind of an ideal situation. And you also have the stack with Kyler Murray. This is shaping out to be a pretty good mock draft so far. And the second guy, as I mentioned, is Mike Williams. Just because he's established, he just got a fat contract extension. I think $40 million guaranteed, $60 million over 3 years or something like that. So $20 million a year with 40 of that guaranteed. Keenan Allen is kind of getting up there in age. And let me just quickly look, actually. We can pull up Keenan Allen. So he's 30, man. Keenan Allen is 30 years old, coming off of 5 really good, productive seasons. It feels like about that time where the tides are going to start to shift, and it's going to be the Mike Williams show. He's got Justin Herbert. The Chargers' offense should be fantastic. I think their defense will be the number one defense in the NFL next season. And that might sound like blasphemy to some people. I don't like the Chargers, but I think they're going to have the best defense. They're going to have a fucking amazing offense with Herbert and Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler and Mike Williams. And this is where I would take Mike Williams. I think he's going to be the wide receiver 1 for the Chargers. And he's in my opinion, in the 6th round, getting a guy who could be a top. I mean, dude, if it shapes out that way and Mike Williams does kind of take that lead role, why can't he be a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy if he's on probably the top offense in the NFL? It's like the Bengals, it's the Chargers, it's with the Chiefs or the Bills. I mean, the Bills are going to be a top offense just by default. Maybe the Rams again. Like, those are like the top 5 offenses. And if you're going to get a guy who could be the wide receiver 1 for the team, like, it's all speculative at the end of the day. But that's what I would pick at this pick with the hopes that he vaults into that upper part or that upper echelon of wide receiver. So I'm going to take Mike Williams here. I think this draft is shaping out pretty nicely so far. And then this is where it starts to get a little bit ugly, a little bit brutal. This is where you and your buddies have had quite a few beers. The banter starts coming out. Every single pick gets scrutinized. Everybody's pick sucks. Everybody's pick also gets sniped at the same time. So, which doesn't make a lot of logical sense, but that's just how it goes. So, my pick is back on. Let's pause it. Let's talk about some of the prior picks, perhaps. So Jalen Hurts coming this late, great pick. Could be a top 3 quarterback in fantasy. Yeah, I mean, just a little tiny bit of context. I would take Hurts over Dak. I would take Hurts over Burrow. And I might take Hurts over Lamar Jackson. I know that sounds crazy, but I might do that, or he might end higher than Lamar Jackson in fantasy. That's a hot take, but that's what I think. So some decent picks came right before who I would have liked having at that pick. A guy like AJ Dillon could have been a nice player, or he has his own intrinsic value. Even if Aaron Jones stays healthy, he's gonna mix in and have some value as like a flex play. But if Aaron Jones goes down, he instantly becomes like a top 10 running back, you know? So those are like the types of mid-round guys that you like to get. The Kareem Hunts of the world, the Walkers, the Dillons. Yeah, those are perfect picks within the, round 6 through 10. But let's quickly look at what's left on the board. So, yeah, looking at running backs, it's looking pretty thin. It's looking sad. It's looking decrepit. It's looking like a deserted landscape of hopefuls. A guy like Rashad Penny could be interesting there. He's already got a hamstring issue. So, yeah, I mean, James Cook, who knows how that running back room is going to shape out. That's way too risky. There's just too much value at wide receiver. This is where you can also start to look at tight end. Maybe if you want to take a guy that you really like. Maybe you're a Pittsburgh fan. You want Freiermuth. Maybe, Dawson Knox. His chemistry with Allen has been fantastic. I don't see why that's going to change. He's going to be the tight end one for the team. He's on one of the best offenses in the league. and he's been an absolute red zone threat. I mean, he had 9 touchdowns last season, and that could, I mean, you expect some regression in the touchdown department, but that could be an interesting pick there, just to kind of fill up your team, fill up your starting roster with good top players. But if you're going to punt tight end, there is some also value later in the draft. So, which I think I'll do. I think we'll just carry on as if I'm punting tight end. And looking back at the wide receivers, so 3 running backs, 3 wide receivers, no running backs that I really like as like last workhorse type guys who they have the job. There's no one behind them to take the job from them. And, you got guys like Spiller who could take the job of Eckler if Eckler were to go down, or if Eckler were to get injured or be ineffective for any reason, which I doubt. A guy like Spiller. So you have like fill-ins and fill-in hopefuls here, other than Cordero. Cordero could still be that workhorse guy for the Falcons, but I don't expect so. He's 31, and they started to not use him very much at the end of last season. I don't know if you look at his production. What is this? Standard in PPR right here. Yeah, the last couple weeks of the season, 13, 4, 8, 7, 2. Not good. Not very good. So I would stray away from Cordero here. And at wide receiver, yeah, this is where you want to load up on some more wide receivers, I would say, because there's some pretty good value. If you believe in the Chiefs and you believe in Juju as a player, Juju is a fine pick here. He's that last guy who could easily become the wide receiver 1 for the Chiefs. And I think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to take Juju with my first pick. Again, at this point in the draft, you really want to get guys who can become the top guy for their team. That's what you're hoping for. And, you try to justify that with why. You know what I'm saying? So, like, for example, Mike Williams can be the wide receiver 1 for the Chargers because he's younger. They just paid him, and Keenan Allen's old. Marquis Brown could be the 1 for the team because they also just paid him. They just brought him in, and DeAndre Hopkins is suspended. So the opportunity's there. So I think Juju has that same opportunity with Kansas City. He's the most proven wide receiver on the roster. I know Mecole Hardman hasn't really been working out for them, so I don't see him threading that wide receiver 1 role. It could be. I mean, you never know. But let's just go ahead and take Juju. And with my second pick, again, looking at running backs, not too much value on the board. There's a couple of guys later that I would be interested in. But with this pick, I'm going to take Rashad Bateman. And I will take him and then let me first look a little further. Yeah, it's Bateman. It's Bateman by a long shot. I'll take Bateman here, and then let me explain why I'll take Bateman. So, pause. All right. So, again, as I mentioned, Rashad Bateman is the last expected wide receiver 1 for the Ravens. Or he should be the wide receiver 1 for the Ravens. He's that kind of that last guy in that area. Nobody's expecting Ayuk to be the wide receiver 1 for the Niners if Debo is still there. And he's still young. He's still dynamic. He's an amazing talent. And for some reason, the 49ers don't really like Ayuk, he's in the doghouse for the first 6 weeks of the season last season. So Bateman is that guy, should take that next step. I don't imagine someone else swooping that lead wide receiver role from him. So to me, that's like the last guy on this list that I see. And that's why I would take Bateman there. I mean, it's just an easy pick in my opinion. Let's just resume it and see what's up. Was this not getting auto-picked? Oh. All right. We're in business. So we went on a quite an interesting or quite a heavy wide receiver run the last couple of picks. And just to recap, we've got Mixon, Kamara, Murray, Akers, Marquise Brown, Mike Williams, Juju, Bateman. So our running backs are nice and solid. Our wide receivers are nice and solid with a good variance in terms of the types of players we have. We have Brown, who's a deep threat. Mike Williams, who has always been a deep threat but could turn into a possession receiver. Juju, who's kind of versatile, can do a little bit of both. I think he prefers the slot, especially with Mecole Hardman. I don't see why they don't put Juju in the slot. And then Bateman, who last season when Brown was on the team, he was kind of that possession guy when he started to get a little bit involved. And we'll see how they use him. I think they can. He's another guy that they can move all over the field. So you've got some versatility, based on what you need in your fantasy matchup. If you need a guy who can pop, if you need a big fantasy day, you can go with a guy like Brown. Well, if you need a solid floor, you can go with a Bateman. And let's look at who's left on the board. Going back to running backs, I have 3 starting running backs with no real depth behind them. And quickly looking at the board, there's a couple of names who I might be interested in at this pick. The first of which is Randre Stevenson. Could be an interesting pick there. He was very productive for the Pats. They really like him. He's going into his 2nd season. Damien Harris was largely touchdown dependent. I expect Damien Harris and Randre to continue sharing the backfield in New England. So this is kind of like a handcuffy type of pick. But, he could turn into something really, really great for the Patriots if Harris were to go down. Of course, the fear is that they drafted quite a lot of running backs, the Patriots did, with some pretty solid draft capital. So, yeah. None of these running backs excite me very much. Melvin Gordon is stuck in a timeshare with Javonte Williams. James Cook is stuck in a massive committee in Buffalo. You don't really know how that's going to shape out. It could be Singletary. It could be Moss. Maybe not Moss, but he could still get some work. And with that in mind, there's like one more guy who could turn into a running back one on this list. And it's Damien Pierce, strangely. I know he's way down there, 142, but he's like the last guy that I think could be the running back one for the Texans. I don't know if Marlon Mack has any more in him. Maybe he does. He just didn't look very good when he played for the Colts. They gave him like 5 carries a game when he was still with Indy. Oh, my pick's about to... Let me pause it. I don't even know who I want. All right. This is a solid time then to go tight end. Looking at wide receivers... Yeah, there's like one of the last guys on this list that I would like who could become something is Christian Kirk. That he also just got paid, and Lawrence is a good quarterback. He just had a bad first season. I think he could easily turn into a productive second-year wide receiver or quarterback, same way Joe Burrow did. What to do here? What to do? Tight end. No, there's no tight ends that I would take there. If Gronk was back, I would take Gronk here. But there's just guys later who I like. I like David Njoku. I like Irv Smith and Albert O a little bit later. So, with this pick, it's just ugly. Might as well. I think with this pick, I'm going to go with Pierce and Kirk. Pierce and Kirk would be my pick here. Let me go ahead and resume, and I will pick Pierce and Kirk. There's Kirk, and let's go with Pierce for the next pick. And all right, let's see. Trey Lance, great pick. Deshaun Watson, look at these quarterbacks. 10th round, Trey Lance, Deshaun Watson. That's value, man. That's why you want to wait till late. This season, you want to wait till late. I took Murray, who's great value. Russell Wilson could be the quarterback one. There's just so many good quarterbacks this season. A Tom Brady, a Rodgers. You really want to wait till late on quarterback. That's my learnings from this mock. But let's see what running backs are on the board now. So we have 4 running backs and 5 wide receivers. Let's see if we can grab a potential. This would also be a good time to potentially get some backups or handcuffs. There you could go with handcuffs here, but I think there's still some value A Tyler Algier could be a nice pick there because he could easily take that running back 1 job in Atlanta. But this is where the draft starts to get a little bit ugly. A Jahan Dotson, I think, is a nice pick. Yeah, I think that's who I would go with here. Jahan Dotson, fantastic rookie. And let's just go ahead and take a tight end because this is an auto draft mock. So some teams are taking 2 tight ends, as you guys see. I'm going to go with Albert O. Russell Wilson is in town. You expect Albert O to be the starter. They just got rid of Fant. So I think Albert O is you just hope he gets a touchdown every couple of weeks or every other week. If he gets a touchdown, you're happy. Similar to what Dawson Knox was able to do last season. I don't see why Albert O can't do the same. And now the draft starts to get pretty ugly. You're just taking flyers at this point. Some of the last running backs, Algier, that's an easy pick. Could be as I mentioned, could be the RB1. Another potential RB that I like this late in drafts is like a Brian Robinson. Kyron Williams would be a good handcuff to Akers, who we have. But yeah, at this point, pick up handcuffs, pick up dudes who are high up on the depth chart, in terms of wide receivers. Maybe a guy like David Bell could be something there. And Alec Pierce, who should be the wide receiver 2 for the Colts. Donovan Peoples-Jones is like a flyer sleeper pick. William Fuller. If William Fuller goes to the Browns, that could be interesting. At this point, you're just making speculative picks. You don't need a kicker or a defense. You can pick that up right before the season starts. Pick up guys who are, higher up the depth chart, fighting for a spot, You never know how things shake out in a training camp. So with this pick, I'll just go with Brian Robinson. And then with my final pick, Mr. Irrelevant in the draft. Let's see who drops to me. Tyrion, huh? Yeah, this is a throwaway pick, as I mentioned. You can just take another QB if you want for bye weeks. I mean, I usually don't. It's in a 1 QB league. It's really not that necessary, but you can go for like a Tyrion Davis Price in case Mitchell goes down. You get a guy. You can take some of your own backups. It doesn't really matter. For the heck of it. I will take. Yeah, that's a backfield you like to stay away from in Miami. Go ahead and take Kyron. All right. Well, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed the mock. Head to the comments. Disagree with any of these picks if you don't like any of them. If you disagree heavily with something that I said, some of my strategies, I'd love to hear what you think. Let's just minimize it and look at the final team. Mixon, Kamara, Kyler, and Cam with a massive wide receiver run with Brown, Williams, Smith, Bateman, and Kirk. I think that's a solid stable of wide receivers that you can fluctuate through and cycle through as you see fit, with guys like Damien Pierce, Dotson, Algier, Robinson, and Kyron being, 5 rookies that I took near the end of the draft, as that's how I typically like to draft. Pick up proven and productive players early and start to fade into younger, more speculative picks as the draft carries on. I think that's a pretty solid strategy. Again, hope you guys like the video. Like and subscribe if you do, and I will catch you guys in the next one.